Sometimes, no matter what I have planned for a podcast, something just happens that I have to talk about. Because every week, I'm usually on about something. Well, today, I'm not even waiting for the news or for Eric's Week because I'm just so excited to announce that yesterday we had our 8th album signed to a sync library since we started the Positive Spin Partners program. And we just started that program in late 2024. So I am over the moon. I am stoked. I am extremely grateful. And this was accomplished with one of my Positive Spin partners who works like crazy and fills up my Dropbox weekly with new songs and arrangements and is very motivated, extremely motivated to produce new music and be part of Sync as one of her music incomes, as am I. Now, in this week's podcast, I want to go step by step on how I go about working on, and really before I even start working on, an album. And this could be for Sync, or this could be for an artist. This could be releasing new material of some kind. But I'll focus a little bit more today on Sync when we get to the finishing and the pitching part and the things that I do in order to get these albums signed into libraries. This will be helpful to you whether you are in sync or not. So make sure you keep watching, especially for the pre-production part and the production part. This is the entire process, folks, that I use for doing it all, from coming up with the album idea to I'm going to produce it, to sending it to a library coming back and say, we would love to have this in our library. So get your pencils sharpened and your learning hats on, boys and girls, and let's talk about producing and pitching albums to sync. Well, welcome to the Make Music Income podcast. Let's get things all just perfectly set here. My name is Eric Copeland, and I am a full-time music composer, arranger, and producer. And on this show, we do every week here around noon. Sometimes I am not quite ready, and so today I started just a little late, so thanks for joining me here. But we talk about how to achieve musical and financial success in the constantly changing world of music and music income, including music licensing, which we are definitely talking about today, and music royalties, which is a result of what we're going to talk about today, being a music composer, arranger, producer, or artist, doing sheet music, writing for the stage, any other way that I have or currently or want to make music income. You can see that the show is sponsored by MakeMusicIncome.com. That's our website where you can find all sorts of things, including some free things. Go to MakeMusicIncome.com/free and get you some free stuff. I have lots of free and paid ebooks, courses, and one-on-one music career consulting. I also have a program. It's called the Positive Spin Partners Program, and you can find out more about what Positive Spin Songs is. And we're going to show that site today as we talk. But PositiveSpinSongs.com is where you'll find my music. A lot of people ask me, how can I find your music? Well, go right there and you'll be able to find it. But if you're interested in this program, you're going to hear me talk a lot about partners today because that's the entire way. And this particular album that I just got signed is because it was signed with a partner that I worked with on this album. And so if you're interested in this and you want more information about the Positive Spin Partners program, just go to eric@makemusicincome.com. Just email me there and let's just have a conversation on email and start talking about it. Just had somebody yesterday who said, I would love to be a partner. And that's what we're going to do. So let's see, where are we on the script? I'm completely lost today because I have been packing this presentation with So much information that you're going to want to stick around through the entire thing and hear everything that I've got to say on this, because I'm going to lay it all out for you. If you've even thought about sync before, some of this stuff probably has a crossover in my course, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But all my partners will be somewhat talked about today, if not by name, certainly about the album and the pitching process that we do. I also have links below to my other music, to my ericcopelandmusic.com site, because a lot of people ask me, well, what, you talk all this time about making music. What do you make? Do you even make any music? Why don't you go check it out and see? Warning, there's a lot there. So at least you can hear the quality that I'm putting out and what I'm talking about when I say quality music. Check out the description for all of that stuff. It's all down below. As usual, I hope this podcast, I hope my videos, courses, ebooks, all the various sites and sundry things that I have bring you encouragement and bring you new ideas and current information, and that you'll like this video if it's helping you make the music you love and make more music income. Because it's not just about the income, it's about making what you want to make, which is something we're going to talk about today. So let's get into my week, because guess what? It's been a nice week. I've been talking about new music for the past few weeks on this podcast, and I'm getting to work on new music because I've finished up with a lot of briefs that I had to do. And I still have jobs to do for other clients. For instance, 2 weeks ago, we were just starting to get back into the project that I got signed yesterday, because we put it off while we were working on Christmas stuff. And then at first of the year, we got back to it. And then I was still in briefs all through January. If you think, why is he talking about being in his briefs? I was in these briefs where we're trying to get things done for libraries who are asking me for them. And so that was January, and it was crazy. But once February came, that started to relax a little bit, and I was able to get back to albums that we had just planned, that we had just decided to work on, and we were focused on. We had kind of outlined, and we were ready to get them done. This week is all about new successes. Obviously, the 8th album accepted into a library yesterday. The 8 albums includes some EPs that we've done for briefs, but also albums that have been asked of us to brand new libraries that I just met in 2024, end of 2024, and are accepting things. And of course, our longtime and most successful library with BMG. And we have another library that's starting to take more things, and we had some successes with last year. So just a huge thank you to the libraries, but also to my Positive Spin partners, because we're having so much fun putting all this music together and making the music we love. I don't know if we've made music income yet, but that's the goal, and I'm seeing that happen on my PROs from the music that I started to do 2 to 4 years ago. And so we're all kind of investing in this together. Let's see, finishing up the first batch of sheet music that I have been commissioned to do, which is pretty exciting. I have not been commissioned to do a lot of sheet music or score work for orchestras or things like that. I usually just do it on my own. But I was commissioned to do some piano teaching scores, and that's proved pretty interesting and fun. And so I'm about to turn those in today. I'm releasing a new song on my Positive Spin song brand, jazz brand, and hopefully this will come out a week from today, depending on CD Baby. We're going to have a talk about CD Baby. I'm not even going to get into it now because we've got too much to talk about today, but I was going to get into this whole rant about CD Baby and then talk about DistroKid. And CD Baby has issues right now, I think, personally. But we'll talk about that at another time. Maybe that'll be a whole video unto itself. I was paid by a new stock library, and there will be details to come. Not much, $50. But it was one that I was told about, and it's kind of not one that is known very well. And it's just 2 months into me putting music onto it, and I've already been paid. I didn't even ask to be paid. It was just, I just got a PayPal payment the other day, and I was like, what? And it doesn't even show that on the site itself. It's weird to get paid money before it's even recorded online somewhere that you got money. So that's kind of interesting. And just like we finished this cello album yesterday that got signed, we've got a Celtic harp album that I'm working on with Ruth that is finishing up. We're kind of in the same stage as I was with the classical cello record. I'm in that stage now with this Celtic harp record with Ruth. And so by next week, we should be ready to start pitching that out. So we'll see where that takes us and who is interested in that one. Love the Fishing Rod says, did your library ever reject your music album before? Sure. Yeah. It's not really so much a rejection. It's just them saying, as a matter of fact, this very same library that signed this album yesterday actually has taken only 2 out of 4 things I've sent them. And both times, and I'll talk about this later in the video, but both times it's just not what they wanted at the time, and or they didn't think they could do anything with it. And this has happened many times. I am not undefeated in sending albums to libraries, or there's many times that the songs that I send, whether they're mine or with partners, don't get selected, don't get used. So it happens. This whole video is about how I produce and pitch and license for sync specifically, but some of this will be like how I would work on any album for any type of use. Now, next week, or whenever my single launches, I will be doing a similar video on composing, arranging, producing, and then releasing and marketing a single. And so you'll want to tune in for that. Make sure you subscribe if you're interested in that. But this week, it's all about the success of another album signed to a sync library. Now note, this is a exclusive deal. This is a deal that is in perpetuity. This is one of those libraries, and you're going to see that. It's going to be the way it is with most libraries these days who are involved in sync. They want to be the only ones with this product so that when a show comes to them, that show or music supervisor or whoever comes to that library, they can know that this is exclusive to this library. They're not going to have to worry about it being found on 1,000 sites or on stock sites or on all this kind of stuff. And so when I get this signed, I'm celebrating getting this signed, but this means that, number one, I have no more control over these songs to do with whatever I want. There's probably some things I can do with them, perform them live if need be. The cellist could perform them however she wants, but she would likely perform it in a different way. I don't really want to put it on Spotify because this particular library I know does put everything on Spotify. So I want to make sure that I'm not putting this stuff up to streaming. I can make videos about this. I can talk about it on here. I can make my own private disco and show that off to people, and I can do things like that. But for the most part, I have produced, pitched, and now licensed an album to a library once I sign the contract, which I still have to do today. Sorry, library. This album likely won't be released to the library for several months, and or Spotify for several months. I don't know their schedule on it, but once that happens, then the songs can be found and used by TV shows and music supervisors for different uses, for movies, for advertising, for lots of things. So while this is a win, and every time something gets accepted, it's a win, there's still a long road to music income because the songs have to be used. There has to be a cue sheet made from that show that is sent to BMI, and BMI then pays me and my co-writer. So my partner on this project is a cellist who goes by the nom de plume of Ghost Cello, and we have produced and released quite a few things together, and now are in 3 different sync libraries. One that is non-exclusive, mainly because they do covers. He just likes to do covers, and we do some very unique things with different covers, Christmas and pop and different things like that. And then our Christmas cello concerto was accepted into a new library that we signed last year. So Positive Spin Songs looks a little something like this. And you can see here that there's Christmas Concerto right there. I'm kind of in the way. But this was an album that we had accepted during Christmas time, actually. The beauty about disco is that things just look beautiful. And so when you call that up, you will see that it has its own page here. And it shows you the the name, the Ghost Cello and Master Score Music, which is what I use. And then it has a beautiful playlist of everything that's there. So we'll get back to disco and how I use it to send things to libraries here in a moment. But that is a secret, no doubt, and part of the process we're going to talk about today. This one that we just got signed yesterday is more of a classical music-based cello album. So stuff from Bach, stuff from Beethoven, stuff from Holst, stuff from Saint-Saëns, stuff from a lot of different composers. And it's with a relatively new library to me. I just delivered another album on a brief to them last month. And so let's get into how all this happens from idea of the album to pitch to acceptance and talk about it. And thanks for all the likes. If you like this, if you like what you're hearing, we're going to really get deep. So hang on, get out your pencils and take notes because we're going to really talk about all of this today. I do want to make one disclaimer before I get started. I am not the end-all, be-all expert in sync licensing. If you look through my content here on YouTube, you'll see that I talk about a lot of different things. Sheet music and producing and stage, writing for the stage. Who's talking about that except for a few people? And I put as much focus on those things as I do sync, even though I do probably put 50 to 70% of my focus on sync because I just love the fact that the songs are getting out and getting used for purpose, which can be good and bad. I have a video coming up about that. But I will say that sync is one of my main focuses for future income. What some of you would call retirement, I call refocusment on just composing the things I want to compose on. But that I'm looking at all of this as down the years income, which all of you should be. If you're getting into sync licensing, you should be looking at sync licensing as a form of saving for retirement, putting these songs into libraries that will one day, especially if they are very usable by television, that can be used over and over and over and continue paying every quarter to you and just be future income. Everyone should be looking at that, I think. I don't even think there's a reason not to. Just like I don't think there's a reason you shouldn't stream, put your songs out to streaming if you have them, if you're able to, or why you shouldn't do other things in music that you want to do. All the music things. So when I talk about sync licensing or cues or whatever you want to call it, it's about my journey, mine. And that's why my course, Getting in Sync, its basic tenets are how I got into it and found success with sync licensing. And then a little bit on how others got into sync licensing. Not telling you the absolute way, not telling you the way, if you don't do it this way, you'll be wrong. I'm just telling you how I found success at it. And I just feel like this info today, I didn't even have this until last night. I have to do things based on how they feel to me in the moment. And this was the thing that I just had to talk about today. So I hope you feel that this info is helpful for you today. So let's get started with the very first part about this. And that is something that probably you didn't expect me to say when I'm focusing on getting something into sync. But pre-production is hugely important. Everything starts with pre-production. I don't care what kind of project I'm doing, whether it's an album for an artist or a single for an artist or a music video or an album for sync or anything like that. I'm trying to, in my head, before I even get started, start putting together a list of things that I'm going to have to do in order to get it to come out right. And especially since we are talking usually, and this is my process, I usually put together a whole album of music. I'm talking 10 songs of music for a library that I'm going to try to pitch to them, that I'm going to try to pitch to a library. I want to pitch an entire album. And even before I started producing artists, going way back before I was even releasing music to streaming, because there was no streaming, back before I was releasing music on CDs, because there were no CDs, and the best I could do was make a cassette tape to show people, I just like the idea of thinking of a group or an album of songs that told a story. I am a child of the 70s. That was album time. And because we didn't have much TV to watch, when I was a kid, they only had 4 channels. And then cable came along, and you had a few more, maybe, if you had cable. And we didn't have computers. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have all of these devices that keep us busy. So albums, record albums that you bought on vinyl, were an experience. We would buy albums and just sit there between the speakers or with headphones on and just do nothing. I can remember just doing nothing as a kid and sitting, listening on the floor to a West Side Story album. And the only thing I had was the album. It was one of those double albums, so it folded out and it had a lot of pictures in it and a lot of stuff to read. And that was like watching a video. That was like watching Netflix, except I was listening to this album all the way through. And that was my experience. Even before I saw the movie of West Side Story, I was listening to the album and experiencing that album like I would watching a Netflix show or watching some kind of concert on TV, or that was the way we listened to records. And you're saying, what does this have to do? Stick with me. Like I said, it was similar to watching Netflix, but with way less or no cursing, gratuitous sex, and violence. Remember, we had waited also for a lot of the albums that we wanted from ELO or from whatever artist we like, Billy Joel or whoever, or we had just discovered it that we'd never heard it. And regardless, the album experience was from song to song. And it was from side to side. You'd listen to the entire thing and just sit and listen to it because there was nothing else to do, probably. And that is something that's just a bit lost in culture, I think, these days. So give me a thumbs up if you know what I mean. But guess what? Guess who loves albums now? Sync libraries. The experience that a group of songs that weave together because the shows and the music supervisors are looking for a feeling or a mood, and they value a resource that is cohesive, and all the songs are useful to them. I find that sometimes the same shows or music supervisors of those shows come back to the same album when they are looking for a similar scene or a feeling or even for a character of a show. And the way that it happens, if you carefully put together an album of well-produced material that is also similar in content. In the 1970s, we used to call this a concept album. All the songs told a story, or they related to each other in some way, or they kind of flowed a lot of times into each other. Or you put this music on when you're in a certain mood or for a special occasion or to calm your nerves. Well, I look at pre-production for sync very similarly. I am focused on making sure that this album has a feeling all the way through, that each of the songs works together. And I think this is one of the reasons for my success that I've been having in sync and in everything. Now, my artists and my partners probably roll their eyes at my focus on this because I go overboard. I'm always sending them lists of songs and all this kind of stuff. But I think this is a step a lot of us forget about when we're making music or songs that we want to send to sync. And again, if we look back at the Positive Spin Song site, you'll see that all of these albums, all of these things here, they all have kind of a theme. This is a Christmas cello concerto. A concerto, if you don't know, is when an orchestra is playing a piece or a large work, and there is one soloist out in front. And so that's kind of the concept of these albums. It's working with a real cellist who sometimes does other parts, but sometimes I do all the other parts in the orchestra. And it was all based around Christmas. This album was based around nostalgia at Christmas time. This album, obviously, Prison Tension pretty much tells you what it's about. We have Hallowmas, we have college game day beats, we have Christmas dramedy. So this gives you a sense of the kind of examples that I'm talking about here. I carefully plan every album, sometimes before I have started producing a note of that album because I am focusing on the direction that I want to go. And I say, oh, I even sometimes will be watching TV and I'll hear a song and I'll be like, ooh, what if I did a version on that? What if I did tension, but with this piano kind of run thing? I was listening to some tension in a show last night and they had these really cool piano riffs. Or I say, what if I did dramedy, but for Christmas, where you see on my site, I had a Christmas dramedy record. What if you did jazz, but for well-known hymns? Well, this is something that I've had signed recently too. And then I start pre-production. I just get out my phone or I get out my iPad and I start writing down notes for a whole album, or possible album of that type of music. Sometimes even the album titles come to me right then. Sometimes an artist or a partner comes to me with a certain style and says, what if we did this? The minute anyone says Christmas, the printing presses stop and only Christmas albums ideas start flowing in. What kind of unique Christmas albums could we do? And as you saw on there are quite a few Christmas albums on here. There's Christmas Concerto, Christmas Nostalgia, Hallowmas, which is Christmas Dramedy, Classical Christmas. So it's very easy for me to get into a Christmas album. I like Christmas music, and I think that it's a lot of fun to do. And I think there's a lot of unique things you can do with it, which is another kind of hint on how to do sync and stuff like that. But so that's when I start pre-production, when I have an idea for something and you're thinking about this album that you want to do. This is very important. This is why I'm trying to be very succinct about this. Once you know the idea is good and you start thinking about song ideas, and sometimes they even start coming into play. Sometimes the titles of songs you haven't even written yet just come to you. Sometimes ideas for how the song should be produced come to you. And it's all because you are focusing on an album concept. And with every song, written or not, you probably even know how to start the programming or who to partner with. And before you know it, you are knee-deep in production towards an album that you can send out to sync. Just this morning, I had a composer pitch me an idea for an album and how to do it. And because I know his work ethic and mine, and his experience and mine, likely that will be a very usable and successful sync album because of the idea he had in the pre-production we started today, this morning. Now, warning, one key thing I hear talked about all the time, and I'm a little sensitive about this right now, but you hear this talked about a lot in sync from other gurus who talk about this kind of stuff and on how to start pre-producing or produce a song or songs. And that is reference tracks. The idea behind a reference track is you find a song that you like that's a lot like the one you want to make, and you download it and you take it apart, or you stem split it and you use different parts of it to kind of play your song with, just to make sure the vibe is the same and all that kind of stuff. Believe it or not, I had a song rejected off an otherwise successful album pitch because it sounded too close to a reference. And the funny part is I almost never use reference tracks. I don't use like any kind of thing that makes music for me. I make it from scratch, just like grandma in the kitchen. I am making songs from the ground up, out of nothing. But for this one, I thought I would follow the advice that you hear, that you have to use reference tracks. Well, this library did not appreciate that at all, and actually asked me, are all these like this? Apparently they listed that one first, or maybe I had that one first in the playlist, and they said, if they're all like this, then we're not going to be interested. I'm like, they are not. That's the only time in ever maybe that I have used a reference track to make a song like another song. The music, the melody, the chords, the words, nothing was anything similar to the song that I used for reference. And yet the library still was very sensitive about it. I wrote the song in my brain and sang it for years before I even thought of that reference. But once I used the reference and took it to a place that it, I guess, sounded similar, someone heard that similarity, so a professional, and said, we just don't want to take a chance. It's just too similar. So just a little warning there about reference tracks. Sometimes you can pre-produce a little too much and reference tracks that should just be that, referring to them, but only if you don't know how to arrange and produce the track any other way. And I think if that's the case, you have to kind of completely steal another song to make a song. Is this what you need to be doing? The best way is to write down each song and imagine what process would be needed to produce them. I do that, and that kind of gets us into how I produce the songs. Wolfgang says, I also never use reference tracks because most of the time it gets me out of Muse. Exactly. And what happened is I tried to fit this song into another song, and it was a good enough song on its own. It's a great song. And so now I either have to find someone else who may like it the way it is. Maybe someone wants a song that references this song so exactly, like a sound-alike type of thing, which I might just stay with. It's already done. I'm going to remix it. Or I could rearrange it and use different instruments that aren't used in the original and just kind of do it a different way. So I just don't know yet which way I'm going to do, but I think you got to be careful with reference tracks. All right, so let's move on now into actual album production and my method. This is how basically I will write down an album before I start it, while I'm working on it. This is my roadmap. This is what helps me know that I am staying on track. I will, this is a current album that I'll show you in a minute, but we are currently pitching. It's all finished. And you can see the type of album it is just by reading the song names, right? Boot Scootin' and Cowboy and country titles like Reminded Me Why I Left You and I'm Looking for Someone and things like that. It's a really nice album. Roadhouse Jukebox says exactly what it is, but you can see what I've done here. I've got all the titles, and then I've got kind of the people that are my partners on it. And then I've got how I started it, whether I started it with programming or I started with a band. And then what I needed to add after that. There's like the vocals, or in some cases, different players, or in some cases, different singers, or steel guitar in one case, and all that kind of stuff. So this is how I kind of plan out the album. And a lot of times this is done maybe even before we start, but usually throughout the process of producing, I've got this up and ready, and it's helping me stay on task. It's helping me know what needs to happen next in each song, and this is the way I produce. And every album has one of these notes here, and it's just the way that I get anything done. Because I've got so much going on, I have to have stuff that well written out and planned out. This is my roadmap. I know kind of what I want in each song. I know what to do next in each song. I will put parentheses around the things that are already done and then move on to the next thing and know what needs to happen next. And there's generally 3 ways I start a project. Number 1, I start it by programming. And then I add other tracking like drums, real drums or real bass or real guitars or more keyboards or someone else doing something. And then vocals and then mix. That's one way. Me starting program all the way to mix. Second way I start a project is I track with a live band. Then I do overdubs if needed, and then vocals, or sometimes vocals and then overdubs, and then mix. So start with a live band, pretty much done with the track by the time that tracking is over in Nashville or wherever, and then end up in the mix. And then the third way I start a project is with a partner who starts the programming and then sends it to me. And then I add some programming, and then I track maybe live instruments, perhaps, if need be. And then if there are vocals, we add vocals and then mix. So that's 3 different ways that I could do a project. So my job could be to do everything via programming, and no one else is involved. This album right here, 2 of these albums, Halamus and the second Halamus, these are pretty much just me. Not pretty much, they are completely just me. There's no one else involved in these two albums because I just made them from scratch. I made them without anyone else. Same with this solo piano, classical works. What else? Almost all the rest of these have someone else involved. Solo piano hymns is just me. And there's a few that are mostly me, like game day, college game day beats. And so there could be things that don't require one other person in the world, just me. And then there are albums and projects that it could be, like I said, some other person, a partner has started, like the cello parts in this last project that we got signed yesterday. She starts almost every single song with the melody and maybe some bass and harmony, articulations and cello. And then I might just mix that because it's perfect. I don't want to mess with it. Or I might add a few more things to fill in some harmonies or things like that with other stringed instruments, and or do full orchestration behind it. There's several songs on this album that are full orchestra and cello, solo cello. So, and then I mix, and that could be the way that one goes. Work with a partner and myself only, and there's no one else involved. But my job could also be to program a song from the start, work with a drummer, and then add bass, and then add guitars, and then add more keys once I get all that back, or other overdubs, and then find the right vocalist if it's a vocal song in Nashville or on Sound Better, then add background vocals. Sometimes I do those myself, or sometimes the singer does those. Maybe then I have to add steel guitar, or I have to add strings, or I have to have some other overdub, and then mix. So I could be doing a whole lot. I could be doing less, and I could be doing a whole lot in a completely different way that involves a lot of people. These are all ways that I have been producing since the 90s, and I will always work this way. There's also productions that I've done nothing other than made sure I'm just making everything happen. I had the tracking session happen, and then we had the vocalist do their vocals, and then we mixed. I mean, it could be as simple as that. And I didn't do anything except make sure all the processes happen. Any of these ways is right. Any of these ways is fine in how I produce. Sometimes instrumental music, I do all the mixing myself. This is helpful because I'm going to be stemming all the songs. We'll talk about that a little later. I'm going to be making sure all the stems are done for the library when I have to deliver it, like I do today and Monday for this library. And so I might as well have the whole album in Logic where I've mixed it, and that's easy. But with vocal music, admittedly, I'd rather not mix, to be honest with you. Remember, I am a composer, an arranger first, and then a producer, and then an engineer last, especially to mix vocal songs. I feel like the more people you can have involved in any production, in any part of the song, but especially the mix, the better, and the master. If you could have different people mixing and then a different person mastering, I think that's just better. Vocal songs usually will go through me and then an engineer who mixes, and then sometimes the artist or partner who is involved will have to do something else, or they'll have to approve it. Or maybe it'll go to a mastering engineer who has to do the finishing, or maybe an engineer will master it himself. So I know most of you think that, well, I'll just do everything myself and I'll own all the percentages and all the money, and I won't have to worry about dealing with anyone else. There are people who can do this. But let me just tell you a little secret. You love when I tell you the secrets. And this is a secret that I feel that not many people know, and I'm going to share with you now. I feel like one of the secrets of making great music for most people, especially programmers and musicians and composers or songwriters who are not doing hip hop or EDM, and even if you are, just because you're doing hip hop and EDM doesn't mean you can do really great beats and really great hip hop and EDM programming. But almost every other genre, pop, rock, folk, jazz, classical, gospel, anything you're trying to simulate a real band or real players, it's best if you can get players involved. Or you are a player yourself and playing acoustically yourself and recording your acoustic guitar, or recording real percussion, or recording real hand claps and snaps instead of using samples, or you are recording a real bass because you're a bass player, or you're recording real drums. It's best to get others involved. Other players, people not named you. It has been my production style for over 30 years. When I pulled myself out of my studio basement laboratory and started playing with others. And it magnified by like 100 when I moved to Nashville. And I think the real magic comes from collaboration and authenticity and human interaction in the music. I just truly believe this. And yes, I know some people can play all the instruments and make a thing. I can do that too, but I find that in an age that's increasingly filled with AI and with loops and with samples and with easy this and easy that, a real drummer, a real guitarist, a real bass player, a unique vocalist, real cello, real penny whistle. This is thumbs up material, by the way, here, folks. These are things that really make the ears of libraries perk up. If you're interested in Sync World, but this happens on Spotify as well, or live or whatever. People want to see human stuff happening, and we're getting more and more to that point all the time. People want humanity in the music they're hearing. They want authenticity. They want that collaboration. And I think libraries want it too. And I think one of the main reasons this album got signed yesterday is because there was a real cellist playing, warts and all, as far as, you can hear wood crackling, and you can hear bow resin, and you can hear all sorts of sounds that you wouldn't hear if I used Spitfire, beautiful sounds. When I have a upright bass sound, I will turn off the line in, and I will just turn up that microphone and turn up all the noises that the bass makes, and I will play it. And guess what? I have people from Nashville going, who played acoustic bass on this? And I'm saying, well, I did. They said, that sounds so real. People crave real, especially people in the business, people who have to listen to music day after day. They crave real, quality, authentic music. And I think my success in the past 20 to 25 years as a producer, but also as a music maker and composer, songwriter, this mentality has proven out hundreds and hundreds of times with my clients, with my partners, and with any successes I may have had, library or not. I think this is the key to music production. And if you're smart, you will find yourself some partners who can help you make music rather than just trying to watch videos on YouTube and try to figure out how to make a beat that sounds okay enough to send somewhere. Nothing is okay enough. If you're using okay enough as your bar, then you have some work to do before you're going to be considered a serious composer, and you're going to get a quantity of quality songs out to sync. And I really believe that. And I think that is something that has been basically the secret of my success as a producer. Okay, so I want to talk about prepping to pitch your music. And this could be called, instead of pre-production, we could call this pre-pitching. But let's say we have created this album. I've gone through the checklist. I've mixed everything. Everything is beautiful. I'm ready to take that album now and pitch it to libraries. People ask me all the time how I can make music, but I'm just kind of not sure how to pitch it. You need to listen to this part. Like the end of last week and this week, and the album I got signed yesterday, I poured over every song to make sure it was fabulous and rich and well edited. What do I mean by well edited? Well, besides mastering, let's say the mastering is done. I've mixed and mastering, and admittedly with an album that's just solo cellos and maybe some other orchestration that I've done, no vocals. It was fairly easy to mix, and mastering is light. You don't want to kill this stuff in mastering. You don't. It doesn't need to be slamming, right? Cello and orchestral. But well edited means I checked all the beginnings to make sure there's just not a lot of dead time and a lot of time that somebody's going to press play to listen to this album, see if they want to put it on their library. Well, is it going to play right away, or is it going to be 7 seconds before something starts playing? So I made sure the beginnings were tight, and I made sure that there wasn't any noise because I was dealing with real cellos and microphones that were picking up these cellos. So there could be chair squeaks or different things like that, bows hitting the wood or whatever. Same thing with endings. I made sure the endings were clean. I made sure that that each of the songs ended well, and when it was done, it was not too quick of a fade, but it was a fade enough before you heard any noise or anything like that. I made sure the mastering was right, which again was not a big part of the problem with an album like this. And then I take very careful stock of what the titles are. What are the titles? What are the song names of each of these? And these were all pieces from composers. So what I decided to do, and I do this from time to time, is I put the name of the song and then in parentheses, I put the name of the composer. Now, why would I do this? Well, I did this for this album because it was a classical album that I was pitching. And a classical album, and these were all well-known songs. So being well-known songs and those names being known, like Beethoven, like Bach, like Holst, like some of the, like Chopin, well, that's helpful not only for the library to say, "Oh, yes, I want that song," because I know. Sometimes you even know the song before you even listen to it because you can see, if you know classical music, you can see the composer and say, "Oh, I know what that's going to sound like." So the song name had a little bit of a thing on it. I did this too with a recent project for Celtic Harp. It was a Christmas project, and we listed the year each one was written because they were written like in the 1500s or the 1600s or something like that. So the name of the song, which is kind of known, a Christmas song, plus the year it was written. And that way, that helps the music supervisors and the people who are trying to look for music for a show, and it's based in the Middle Ages or something like that, and they want a song that's Celtic, and they know, oh, it's from 1592. That's going to be perfect for this thing. Let me just try that. So song names is part of prepping to pitch because I want to make sure all the song names are just right. And so then I get the partner of the song, if there is one, to sign off and let me know they are also happy with the mix and the master and all that. And I let them know what's going to happen, especially now if a library accepts it, because there are different deals that different libraries do, and how the PRO is going to work, how the sync is going to work, how the mechanicals are going to work. And then the next thing I do is put the album together on disco. And this is a big deal, I think. Putting it together, I've already shown you a disco album so far, and we'll talk about that. But the next thing I do is put the album on disco and get it ready. I order the songs, and this is just like releasing on Spotify or streaming or vinyl or CD or whatever. You got to get the songs in the right order. That makes it an experience for the listener. I don't care if the listener is one person at a library, because eventually it's going to be could be hundreds of people through the years from TV shows and stuff looking at these song titles and listening to these songs in a certain order. And then I make sure I've got 2448 waves I'm putting up, which also in disco will go ahead and make you MP3s and also can make you instrumentals if it's a vocal song. And I do artwork. I do a piece of artwork. You've already seen the Christmas Concerto one, and I did a piece of art. And you can see a little bit of it at the top up here, but you can also see that there's a cover, and there's a cover that goes on each song here. And so this is something I do, and I have to admit that I do use AI for this, to be honest. I used to use stock libraries for this, but I just have decided that it's a little bit more eye-catching to use AI. This isn't necessarily going to be the cover that the library uses. As a matter of fact, it likely won't be. They have their own art departments. Some of them even have their own mixing people, their own engineers. So this artwork is really for my presentation to the library and my presentation to people who go and look at my library on disco. And then I will take it into Photoshop, and I also mess with it in there and put titles on and stuff like that. But disco also allows you to fill out the information. So I keep mentioning disco. Let's talk about that just for a second. I want to just go back to here and talk about disco. This is a disco playlist. This is also a disco album. And I've got another one called up here. This is the Roadhouse Jukebox album. Again, you can see the cover I did for it. Good old boy country songs from your average Roadhouse Jukebox. And you can see the songs. You've seen the list of those, and this is the end result of that album, ready for anyone to listen to. All what they're able to do is over here on these three dots, they can click and download the wave in MP3 and AIF, and you want libraries to be able to do that in case they want to show that or send these around or something like that. They can download all versions. They can save it to their Disco account, which is kind of like saving to your Dropbox, so that's very helpful. And then also I use this for my catalog. Where's my catalog? Here's my catalog at Positive Spin Songs. And so this is set up so that people can search it by mood. They can search it by instrument, tempo, all that kind of stuff. So Disco is a very helpful tool. Music management solved, they call it. It's pretty much the industry standard now for sync licensing in general, I think. But you can use it. I know somebody who's using it to send stuff to radio right now. I use it for marketing. All of my albums on my Positive Spin Songs page, they are all links to a disco album. And so you can use it for that kind of thing. You can use it for marketing. So I just find it's very useful to use, and I couldn't live without it. I know that. And there is a link to Disco down below if you're interested in figuring it out. And let me just say this about Disco while we're talking about it. And you're saying, why is all this necessary? Couldn't I just throw it to SoundCloud? Listen, first of all, you want it to be a nice presentation. I just showed you what one looks like. You want to make sure it's downloadable, and you want metadata on those things, and Disco allows you to do that too. But you also want no freaking commercials, because nothing is going to get a music library to quit listening to your music like a commercial coming on. I was listening to a guy's music, and I've already talked to him about this, so I'm not talking about his back. But I was listening to a guy's music yesterday, and it was great. I was hearing all these tracks, and they were very nice quality. And then all of a sudden, an ad for SeaWorld came on. Well, in my head, I was thinking, wow, he did music for SeaWorld? And then I saw that I was just stuck in an ad for 30 seconds and couldn't get out and listen to another song. And I only had a few minutes to listen. So, folks, I don't think SoundCloud is something you need to be using to send music to libraries anymore. I think you need to be using Disco, and I'm not even going to say anything else about it. You can see the link down below if you want to look more about it. But make sure the pitch presentation is going to be a complete joy to a library. They don't have to download anything. Never send a download. Never send MP3s. And I think when they get a nice presentation and it's something different and organic and unique in some way, it's almost a no-brainer for them. Like I said with the Roadhouse Jukebox album, we looked at it. You know, it's all ready to go, and I've already pitched it once. I'm getting ready to pitch it to some other libraries, and it's just it's a beautiful thing. If they like the music, then it's a no-brainer. They've been presented a nice way. They can download it if they want to, and they can save it to their Disco if they want to and listen more to it later. So I just really think that you've got to be careful on how you are putting these things out and sending them. You want it to be a beautiful presentation. So now that we have pre-produced the pitch, we've done pre-production on our pitch, let's go ahead and pitch. So this isn't actually the hardest part of this whole process, but it's something that you are likely pretty apprehensive and anxious about doing. This comes easier to you when you have relationships with libraries, and especially someone at that library who you are in regular communication with and or you pitch to them often. How much is too much to pitch? Well, you just have to use your judgment here. I mean, do you really want an email every day from someone sending you something you didn't ask for? That's something to think about. But once every few weeks or once a month, and it's something you know they will like because one, they have told you that they like this kind of thing, or two, you've examined their library carefully and you know it would fit with their library. Now, I have also had libraries tell me, don't send us this genre or this genre. And that it would shock you some of the genres that are all the people in Q's and in Sync are talk about these kind of genres all the time, but shockingly, they don't want some very usual ones that you hear people talk about. And they'll tell you why. They say, we just don't have that much call for that kind of music, or we don't have that much luck with that. So if you have that relationship, once you do start a relationship with a library or with a person at a library, make sure you find out what they really want and especially what they don't want. Knowing what they don't want is very helpful. And so keep that in mind. I even had a library recently tell me while they liked an album that I sent to them and would actually ingest it into their catalog. They'd put it in their catalog. They wanted to be honest and say it probably wouldn't get much use because they just don't see much use of that kind of stuff with them. So I appreciated that, and I showed it to another library, and as it happened, they were very excited, and they did very well with that kind of thing. So that's why, it's great to have other libraries that you work with. So if one person's like, that's not for us, the other library can be like, ooh, yes, we want that. And this is another reason why relationship and communication with your library reps is so important. Like I said, I did all the work really before the pitch. Before it was even time to pitch, I did all the work. I did the pre-production on the pitch. All I had to do at that point was just decide which of the libraries that I had, and probably 3 or 4 might have accepted this, to be honest. I'm kind of famous in Nashville with my players and stuff for spreading the love around because I like to work with everybody. And so there are bass players and maybe drummers who are like, why didn't you choose me for this job? Well, it's not that you couldn't do the job. It's just because I like hanging with this guy too. So I kind of spread it around. So same with this. And I wanted to make sure it was in a certain library and I was, balancing out all the libraries because your goal is to kind of see which libraries are going to do best for you as you go along. And so that's been what has happened with me. So at that point, it's just about figuring out the library you're going to send it to and then putting together a simple email. I believe this email that I sent was 3 lines long. Let me just find it here. I'm not going to show it to you, but I will tell you exactly what I said. Here's an album we just finished this week with a real cellist, and I work with her all the time in arrangements we worked on together. Then I put the disco link, and then I put, let me know if you have interest in it. That was it. You know why? Because there was already relationship with that library. And I had just pitched something to him last week that I did not get accepted. He said, this is not something for us. So I was taking a risk, but yet I wanted to continue to see. And as it happened in this one, the actual words were, we would be happy to publish this album. Thanks for thinking of us for this. That's what you want. You want them to be appreciative and have something that works for them. He could have just as easily said, hey, not right now. This is not for us. And I would have gone on to another library. So really, the next part is what's going to happen after they say yes. And that means signing contracts, which I have to sign. And that means the final license. And I have to get final clearance with my partner. And then I have to start making stems, which are, this particular library likes to mix the album themselves or be able to mix the album themselves. So you send them all the stems and they have certain directions for that. Every library has its own set of directions that it asks for. And then I have to deliver. I have to upload to a specific Dropbox they give me to deliver all the stems and a mix to. And then at that point, the contract's signed, stems and everything are delivered, and that album is done. And so that is that. And that's pretty much and I know that wasn't a little. That was quite a bit on how I produce, pitch, and license. Electric Jazz Piano says, disco looks pretty pointless. Oh, okay. I guess it looks better than SoundCloud. It certainly does. I've never done library music, so maybe I just didn't realize how important the presentation of the music is. Presentation of the music is always important. What if Spotify, not that it looks like great, but what if it just was all like white and bad fonts and all that kind of stuff? It's not. It's a well-oiled machine. Apple Music too, well-oiled machine. These things have to be well-oiled interfaces to work for people to want to come back and have an experience there. Everything. This video that you're watching now, do you know how long I make sure that I'm in the right place on this video, that my sound is good, that all of these titles and stuff appear perfectly? Presentation is everything. And yes, I could send a SoundCloud, and could have sent a SoundCloud because of my relationship with this library. However, SoundCloud is going to play commercials at some point during that time. Why would you use that? It doesn't make any sense at all. And I feel like disco is such a better way to show it. You could have the experience. I had listened to a composer who really wanted me to listen to his songs, and I got stuck in a commercial for 30 seconds. Or you can have something that's more like this. Would you rather see something that is really laid out and beautiful? And then also on some of these, you can even go in and see, you can put the instrumentals down below. You can download different things. They can go in and see the metadata of the song, who wrote it, how to contact you, all that kind of stuff. See, it's got the contact information right here. It's clean. There's not 1,000 things on the side over here that are bothering us with people's comments about SoundCloud and all that kind of junk. This is the professional way to present your music to libraries and really anyone you're trying to present music to. I think this is the way to go. You could show your music that you make off in a lot of ways and produce music for other things. Like I said, I know a guy who uses disco for radio promotion, and he sends out a link from disco. I'm getting ready to promote a single that I'm putting out next week, and I'll use disco to send it to some stations, some online stations, and some people who have playlists and things like that. And so, well, I hope this has been helpful to you. It's at least it's been long, but I think it is pretty much the process that I go through when I am getting something accepted, like I did yesterday. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out the description below. It's got links to all the things I've been talking about, including disco, and all of our free and paid ebooks, courses, and one-on-one coaching for your music career. And you can find all that if you just want to go to the site at makemusicincome.com. Oh, you can also be part of Positive Spin Partners, which is how this album got done. This album would not have been accepted by a library had I not started working with this cello player who sends me many things. And we're pivoting right from this album. We already had a Christmas album and now a classic album. So we're pivoting right to a wedding album after this of cello type stuff. So that's what it takes. That's the kind of partner you need. Somebody who is their hair is on fire for this. My hair has already been on fire and is gone. But I am, as somebody put it in the chat, quite driven. As a matter of fact, I was just called that today. But I hope this has been helpful. Check out makemusicincome.com/free and get you some free stuff if you want to. And we will talk to you next week. I hope this has helped you make the music you want to make, and hope it helps you make music income. We'll see you next time. Have a great time this weekend, whatever you're doing, and make some good music. And thanks for watching. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.